At 2:17 in the morning, Daniel Carter stared at his phone with the kind of horror that made his stomach drop. His thumb had just done something he could not undo. On the screen was the dating profile of the one woman he absolutely should not have liked, his ex-wife's younger sister, Emily. And beneath her photograph, the words, "It's a match," glowed brightly in the darkness. Daniel whispered to himself that there was no way this could be happening, but then his phone vibrated. One message appeared, "So, you're looking for me." He closed his eyes, wondering how one careless second could possibly destroy the quiet life he had spent 3 years trying to rebuild. Daniel was 36 and had become a single father almost overnight. 3 years earlier, his marriage to Laura had ended after years of arguments, broken promises, and a painful realization that they wanted completely different lives. Their divorce had been messy, but Daniel never allowed his daughter Lily to see him speak badly about her mother. Lily was 7 now, bright, sensitive, and obsessed with drawing pictures of their little family. Daniel had promised her that no matter what happened between adults, she would always be loved by both parents. But after the divorce, Laura moved to another city for work, and gradually her visits became less frequent. Daniel became the parent who packed lunches, checked homework, washed tiny socks, attended school meetings, and sat beside Lily when nightmares woke her at 3 in the morning. He worked long hours as a project supervisor during the day and came home exhausted every evening, but somehow he always found enough energy to listen to Lily describe every detail of her day. For a long time, Daniel convinced himself that he did not need anyone else. Love had become something he associated with disappointment. Then, one rainy evening, after Lily had fallen asleep on the couch with a coloring book beside her, Daniel downloaded a dating app. He told himself it was only curiosity. He was lonely, but he was also afraid. He didn't want another complicated relationship. He didn't want someone who would walk into Lily's life and disappear. Most of all, he didn't want to make the same mistake twice. If you believe that kindness, second chances, and a little courage can change someone's life, please take a moment to like this story, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Sometimes a simple story can remind us that love doesn't always arrive when we expect it. Daniel spent almost an hour scrolling through profiles without liking anyone. Then he saw a familiar face. Emily Bennett. Laura's younger sister. The woman who had always been kind to Lily, even when the rest of the family had taken sides during the divorce. Emily had been the only person who quietly told Daniel that he was doing a good job as a father. She had never judged him, never asked him to explain himself, and never treated him like the villain in Laura's version of the story. Daniel immediately tried to swipe away, but his tired thumb slipped. Like. His heart stopped. Then came the match. And then her message. Daniel didn't answer for several minutes. He considered deleting the app, throwing the phone across the room, or pretending he had been hacked. Finally, he typed a nervous explanation, admitting that it had been an accident. Emily responded almost immediately, saying she believed him, but there was something strangely funny about the situation. Daniel expected her to tease him or tell Laura. Instead, she asked how he was doing. That simple question stayed with him. They began exchanging occasional messages. At first, everything was harmless. They talked about work, Lily's school, books, movies, and the strange challenges of being adults who were constantly pretending they knew what they were doing. Emily had her own scars. After losing her mother when she was young, she had learned to hide her loneliness behind independence. She worked as an elementary school counselor and spent most of her days helping children whose parents were struggling. Daniel slowly discovered that Emily understood things he had never been able to explain. She understood why he checked Lily's temperature whenever she coughed. She understood why he sometimes sat awake after Lily fell asleep, worrying about whether he was giving his daughter enough love to make up for everything she had lost. One Saturday, Emily offered to meet him for coffee. Daniel almost canceled 3 times. The thought of sitting across from Laura's sister felt ridiculous and dangerous. But when he arrived at the cafe, Emily wasn't waiting with judgment in her eyes. She was simply smiling, holding 2 cups of coffee, looking nervous herself. Their conversation lasted nearly 3 hours. For the first time in years, Daniel laughed without forcing it. Weeks passed. They met again, and then again. Emily never rushed into Lily's life. She understood that Daniel's daughter came first. When Daniel finally introduced them, he made it clear that Emily was simply a friend. Lily looked at Emily for a long moment before asking whether she liked drawing. Emily smiled and said yes. Within minutes, they were sitting on the floor drawing flowers together. Daniel watched them from the kitchen doorway, feeling something inside him soften. But happiness rarely arrives without testing us. Laura returned to town unexpectedly and learned that Daniel had been spending time with Emily. She was furious. She accused Daniel of betraying the family and accused Emily of deliberately taking advantage of the situation. Daniel didn't respond with anger. He simply told Laura that their marriage had ended long before Emily entered his life, and that he would not allow their past to decide Lily's future. Emily, however, became frightened. She worried that Daniel's relationship with his ex-wife's family would become unbearable because of her. She told him that perhaps they should stop seeing each other. Daniel wanted to argue, but instead he realized that Emily was protecting him from another painful chapter. For several weeks, they stayed apart. Daniel returned to his old routine. Work. School. Dinner. Homework. Bedtime stories. But something was missing. Lily noticed it too. One evening, while Daniel was helping her with a drawing, Lily quietly asked why Uncle Emily wasn't coming anymore. Daniel froze. He explained that sometimes grown-ups became scared when they cared about someone. Lily looked at him and said something that stayed in his heart, "Daddy, if someone makes you happy, don't let being scared make you lose them." Daniel barely slept that night. The next morning, he drove to Emily's apartment. He didn't arrive with flowers or a perfect speech. He arrived with honesty. He told her that he had spent years believing love meant losing control, getting hurt, and eventually watching someone leave. But she had shown him that love could also mean patience, respect, and choosing each other even when life was complicated. Emily cried because she had been waiting to hear those words. They didn't promise that everything would be easy. They promised something better, that they would face difficult days together. Months later, Daniel and Emily stood in the backyard while Lily ran through the grass carrying a handmade bouquet of wildflowers. There was no grand wedding, no expensive decorations, and no perfect fairy tale ending. There was simply a family learning how to become whole in its own imperfect way. Daniel sometimes still remembered that accidental like. What had seemed like the worst mistake of his life had become the unexpected doorway to his second chance. Emily once joked that if his thumb had been a little more careful, none of this would have happened. Daniel smiled and told her that perhaps some mistakes were simply life finding a way to correct the plans we made for ourselves. Years later, Lily kept the first drawing she had made with Emily. It showed 3 people standing beneath a huge yellow sun. The figures weren't perfect. Their hands were too large, their faces were crooked, and the flowers looked more like stars. But beneath the drawing, Lily had written 3 words, "My safe place." If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with someone who believes that people deserve second chances, and subscribe for more emotional stories. Your support helps these stories reach someone who may desperately need a little hope today. And before you leave, comment "second chances" if you believe one unexpected moment can completely change a person's life. Because sometimes the most beautiful chapters begin with the mistake we wish we could take back. Sometimes a lonely father needs only one unexpected message to remember that his heart is still capable of loving. And sometimes, what looks like an accident is actually life quietly opening a door that we were too afraid to knock on ourselves.